All right, we're ready to start the balance session for May and June 2013, starting with part 1, proprioception. Remember, this section is all about getting used to the board, getting everybody warmed up, moving all different parts of the body, engaging the core, and working different elements, different planes of motion as we begin. So we're starting with a hip stretch. This is to get ourselves loosened up a little bit. We don't want to overstretch, but we want to loosen up, get that core involved, and we're also learning how the board moves. So this is a non-intimidating way to get everybody started on the board. We're nice and low, gripping the rails with our hands, coming into a plank position, and then bringing one foot and knee forward all the way to a 90-degree angle, stretching it out a little bit. We're going to repeat this for about 30 to 45 seconds, and then we're going to plank to sit. So this makes it a little bit more high intensity, but again, still a nice safe movement, get everyone used to the board. So start with 1 foot at a time, coming to a seated position. And then we're going to bring our hands back to the board, 2 feet back to a plank, and 2 feet forward, one at a time, hands up. So your beginners are going to stay here. Your more advanced are going to be able to do 2 feet at a time with a little hop like Mike just did there. Hop those feet forward. You can see Hampton in the video right there. So bring those feet forward, hands up, feet back into plank and forward. So just warming up the core here, about 30 to 45 seconds here. Now we're going to add the arms in as we go. So it's another way to get the core engaged, moving all of our limbs. Once we come to the seated position, we bring our feet up and we start to do some arm circles. So everybody's going to be used to the way that board moves side to side. That's the most important part, is just getting their confidence up before we move into some more advanced movements. Stressing core strength, of course, as we go through here, but also body control, because balance is all about body control, proprioception, spatial awareness. That means getting an awareness of ourselves in 3D space as this board rocks side to side to really throw off our balance. So now into a seated rock. Hips are right in the center, just like we would for any core session. We have our hips in the center. We're rocking that board side to side. Your beginners are going to have their heels on the board. They can even have their hands on the board, just rocking it side to side here. Warming up the core, getting used to the board. Or you can bring those feet up, more advanced, and twist side to side. Look how Mike's board is just really tilting left to right, and he has it on the beginner setting here. So if you have somebody on an advanced setting, that board's going to tilt side to side, really engage the obliques. Now let's move on to a knee paddle. So right into it. Again, proprioception, this is another position on the board. So we're flipping over, we're on the knees, that board is moving around underneath us. We're going to bring the arms forward and bring them all the way back. So his belly button is drawn in towards his spine, looking forward as if we're actually paddling through the water. So we want to see where we're going, getting the heart rate up a tiny bit. And into an opener stretch. So this is a challenge too. Although it looks like it might be simple, it's just averting the eyes and getting into a different gaze with our eyes here is going to make it a challenge for our balance. So he's leaning back, pushing the hips up forward, stretching out, opening up the hips before we really begin the workout, challenging everyone to look up at the ceiling and challenge their eyes with their balance. And our last move before we repeat all of these movements in the proprioception section is a down dog hold. So if you're a yoga instructor, you're going to have a lot of familiarity with this. We're going to come onto the board, hands towards the front, walk those feet in a little bit, press down on the heels, draw those hips back towards the back wall. You can hold this as long as you need to get everybody comfortable. Try to hold for about 30 to 45 seconds and stress the fact that board is moving underneath them, so it's going to be a little different. Repeat that before we move on to part 2, core strength. We're going to start in tabletop. So this is a nice beginner core strength movement, but it is challenging. So for a beginner, we're going to just stay in tabletop. So flat back, knees are on the board, just about hip width. Our hands are up towards the front rails, gripping the sides, engaging the core, lengthening the core, holding it here. Now if you want to get more advanced, we're going to reach out with our left arm and our right leg. So opposite arm, opposite leg. And then even more advanced, we can bring the knee across the body to the opposite elbow. So draw it in and elongate, lengthen out. So this is definitely an advanced move. You're going to see that board is going to tip side to side for the majority of your clients, and it's really going to be a challenge. And we're going to try the other side for a little balance. So bring that right arm out and the left leg back and bring it across the body, crunching across the core, lengthening out, keeping a straight line between our left shoulder and left wrist as it stabilizes us. Second move in the core section here, we're moving on to an explosive cross sit-up. So we're going to come up and across the body in one explosive movement. So let's try 10 to 12 on each side before we switch sides, because it's definitely a challenge to switch sides in between. Now you can see Mike's demonstrating the more advanced version here with the arm off the board. and bring it across. Now switch left to right, so an explosive sit-up. Remember that as we go, you want everybody to explode up and slow on the way down. Next, we're going to move on to hip circles. So we're staying in the same position, laying down, hips to the center of the board, lower back press down. We're going to extend the legs up. So if anybody has lower back pain, they can bend their knees while doing this, but otherwise you want to try to keep the legs as straight as possible. We're holding the rails of the board for extra stability. More advanced version, hands by our ears, not on the board. You can bring the legs opposite direction to the inside, opening up the hips, working the lower core here primarily. And we're going to do that for about 30 to 45 seconds before moving on to dolphin kicks. So we're switching between a supine and a prone move here, trying to give different parts of our abs a little break to not totally fatigue them and being able to continue working the core. So dolphin kicks, bringing it in, kicking all the way up high behind us. So we're back into working the triceps and the shoulders here, about 30 to 45 seconds before we flip over for another move laying down on the board. So alternating between the two, this gives it a little bit of variety so nobody gets too exhausted and they can keep working their core for the whole section. We're going to roll up so you can see Joy's demonstrating with hands on the board. Chest up tall, chin up, neck in alignment with the spine. Now she can try it with her hands by her ears. See, her feet aren't moving, they're planted on the board. And rolling up slowly. So this is a challenge, trying to keep that board stable side to side as we do it. And now even more advanced, hands overhead and lift them up at the top. So you can bring the hands to the rails as a beginner version or hands to the ears. Most advanced version, hands come all the way up in a fist to the top. Now our last move here before we repeat the core section is plank to pike. So I'm sure you've seen and done this one before, but we're going to focus on the core here. So just emphasize that we're drawing everything back through the core. Tighten the core. We're bringing it back towards the back wall using our hips and forward. So you don't want to put too much pressure in the upper body here. This is more of a core exercise. And now repeat the entire section once before moving on. Now for part 3, body control. So we're going to start with Hawaiian get-ups. You've done this one before. We're going to do it in a very slow, controlled way for the balance session here. So coming all the way down onto the board, hips in the center. So Mike's 6'4", he's a tall guy, so he's taking up that whole board. If you're not as tall, you want those feet on the main pad, otherwise his feet are all the way up at the front. He's doing a Hawaiian get-up here with 2 hands, so he's using 2 hands to help him stand up and reach towards the ceiling. This is definitely a challenge, trying to maintain stability. And remember, this section is called body control, so we don't want to do it too fast and sacrifice the form. It's all about controlling our movement, getting our brains and our bodies used to this motion of going from seated to standing. And then once we've done that, I'd say about 10 repetitions before we move on to one-hand Hawaiian get-ups. So these, we only use one hand to get up. We're going to alternate sides. This is going to make it a much greater challenge side to side because you're only using one hand for assistance on the way up, and you can add some squats in as we stand up. Using that one arm, so Mike's lengthening his legs all the way out, making it more of a challenge rather than keeping them planted on the board. Going right into squats, knees staying over those ankles, hips coming back and down after each one. So you can alternate sides, you can do a couple on each side. You want to go for about 10 reps here of the one-hand Hawaiian get-ups as well. And just stress to all of your clients that there's no speed necessary here. So if during the time that you're doing this, people can only do 5 or 6 of these because they're falling behind the class, that's absolutely fine. It's all about repetition, getting used to it, getting our spatial awareness and our body control. Into a step back lunge. So Mike's stepping back with one foot from a sup stance into a lunge. So again, this is body control. We've done a lunge before, just coming from a plank into a lunge, but this is more about control, stepping back. So we have to trust ourselves, getting used to how long that board is compared to our stance. Mike stretching all the way to the back, dropping that knee down into a lunge, and then stepping back forward. So remind everybody to take this one slowly, focus on control before we move into surf openers. So starting again in sub stance, we're going to open up the hips, come all the way out to a surf stance and squat. Bring it back forward, open up the hips, opposite direction, right into squats. So we've done these in a cardio class before, in a burn session, but we're doing it here now in a much more slow, controlled motion. So we're focusing on just moving from forward into a lateral position, stressing the opening of the hips And you can see Mike's a little cautious on the board, so everybody's going to be very cautious during this exercise. That's the point. We want to be cautious. We want to be controlled. Moving on to windmill squats. And we've done these. We introduced these in another session as a fast movement. This time we're going to do them really slowly, so you can really transform the exercise by transforming the focus. This time we're focusing on slow, controlled windmill squats, reaching all the way up, all the way across the rail, squatting back, hips are coming back, coming down towards the board in our squats, focusing on getting to each side, all the way down, reach, and all the way up. So people are definitely going to feel their legs start to shake here. Your clients are going to feel this in their muscles, in their core, but it's primarily about body control, and we're going to repeat all of these movements again before we move on to part 4, flexibility. So flexibility is not just stretching. There's a lot more involved here. We're going to start with a sprinter stretch. So see, for Mike, this is a challenge. He's very, very flexible, but for a lot of people, this is going to be really challenging as they try to bring the leg up between their arms. So focus on that. You don't want to drag your toe along the mat. You want to bring your foot up flat, right between the arms. So sprinter pose and slowly bring one foot back and switch it. So you can see his heel is coming up to the board. He's not dragging his toes. So do that for about 30 to 45 seconds. Before we move on to a toe curl. So this is a challenging move. Some of your clients may not be here right off the bat, but at least they can bring their leg forward. They don't have to grab it like Mike is. If their balance is struggling, they can just bring the leg, bend the knee, bring it, scoop it forward, and try to straighten it at the front, holding the board if they need to. So this is a lot about flexibility. It's just moving the body in a certain way that really encourages you to open up a lot of your muscles and a lot of your joints. We're going to repeat that on the other side. Bringing the hand to the board, scooping that foot under and up. So he's releasing with his right arm and grabbing his right toe, keeping his left arm on the rail for stability. You can keep both arms on the rails. You can bring that foot to the outside of your arm, and if you want to be even more flexible, bring it to the inside. Stepping up now into a lunge, pressing up. So we've done a lunge already in this session, but now we're going to focus on a pulsing lunge, a lunge stretch, trying to open up some of those muscles, stretch it out, focus on flexibility and balance, bringing the arms forward, palms facing each other to start. Now reaching up towards the ceiling, dropping that back knee down, a nice low, controlled lunge, reaching up and even challenging our balance by looking up at the ceiling, straight up and down through the core. Hold that for about 20 seconds before we switch. We're going to drop the back knee down, knee over the front ankle, palms face each other forward, and drop the back knee down, reach up. So you can take your time here. If you have clients that are struggling, just teach them how to get stable right up and down the board before you move on to a pigeon stretch. So bringing that right knee underneath our body. Our right heel is towards our left hip. Mike can even lengthen out here a little bit more, trying to stretch down, dropping those elbows, dropping your head, resting, but also feeling a stretch in the outer leg, glutes, pressing up now, looking up at the ceiling, pressing back, stretching it out. So flexibility is about control as well. It's about core strength, trying to maneuver our limbs. We're also just trying to get a good deep stretch here on the board, but remember the board is moving side to side, so switch those legs into a pigeon stretch on the opposite side. The board is still going to be moving, so we're still working to stabilize it, even while we're just laying here in a stretch. Now push up through those palms, look up towards the ceiling, stretch back, breathe, and focus. Remind everybody how much work this does actually require, because they might look at it and say, I should be able to do this. This looks easy, especially if you're doing it and you make it look easy because you've practiced. But a lot of your clients are going to struggle with these movements that seem simple. It's a great challenge when you get them on this board and it moves side to side. So just embrace that. Have everybody understand how much hard work they're doing, even in a slow-paced class. There's a lot of body benefits here. There's a lot of proprioception, spatial awareness, core strength, lean muscle building. So just focus on all of their accomplishments. Stretch out the glutes here. We're seated, stretching side to side, also getting a little twist through the core. Switching sides, of course. Hold those for about 20 to 30 seconds before we come up into a standing quad stretch. And breathe. So although we say 20 to 30 seconds, it's probably going to take you a little while to get everybody transitioned into a movement. So that may take some time, and you want everybody to experience a stretch and the movement. So if you have more advanced people in the class, they will be holding it longer, and that's absolutely fine as you try to get the beginners into the position. Coming into the other leg, focusing on getting that foot centered so you can lift up your opposite foot, stretch out the quads, look forward, strong core, reach up with the right arm, elongate the body, stretch, breathe, focus. Remember, always the SURFSET key is focus those eyes on a non-moving point in the room. Deep breaths. And into our challenge move. So we'll just demonstrate a side plank here. This one's fun, especially if you're tall, so you're taking up the whole board. You want to have your shoulder over your wrist. So Mike's starting with his right arm down, right shoulder over right wrist. His left arm's coming straight up in a straight line. The arch of his left leg, his left foot, is planted on the back of the board, and he's extending his right leg forward. So this may take some time. I would recommend starting with people with their knee on the board so he can keep one knee on the board. Now he's stretching out opposite side, so bringing the knee across and stretching out to the side. That's a challenging move, and that is our balance session.